I'm the executive director with Salsbury Community Society. Here to share a little bit about our project. Salisbury Community Society is the operator for the building called Cohere, which I will speak about. And today I'm really going to center our talk on social design, belonging, and stewardship, as well as a little bit of the history. And I won't go into all the details, so please bring those questions forward if you want to know some more information. I'm also quite new to the organization. I've been in the ED position for about a year, so I was not part of all of the visioning and original work that happened over a decade. I do want to just throw that out there. I'm a learner alongside all of you. I would like to introduce you to Cohere. So Cohere is a mixed income apartment building, and we're located on the former underused parking lot of the Grandview Baptist Church at Victoria and First in East Vancouver. We're on the unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And so how this started is the church had been actively engaged with the Grandview community since the early 90s. They were striving to address the needs of the community as well as the city. And Cohere, it means community here. And so the church's vision was really to think about how could they serve their community and address this critical need for housing. So the building is a 26-unit apartment where residents work hard to become great neighbors. They share their time with each other through community meals, gardening, caring for common spaces, and simply enjoying life together. Our aim is to have a diverse community that offers affordable housing with supports from people within the building that carry a variety of different skills and backgrounds. And so initially, Grandview Church was the landowner of this property, and they transferred ownership to a foundation called the Cohere Foundation. And throughout the development process, the church provided lots of input on the project. And they did that through representation on both the operator board, the Salsbury Community Society, as well as the Cohere board, which is the foundation. So I might go into a little bit more of that towards the end, but we're going to kind of talk more on the design. As an operator, we are a socially oriented housing operator that really looks to operate affordable housing that cultivates belonging and community. So as I mentioned, we really were looking at how can we foster relationships, and that was a huge part to garner project support and funding. And there was a broad agreement that the housing designed for social connection is a much needed community asset across Vancouver. And so actually 47%, nearly half of our building, is flexible common space that can be used for residents, which is a lot. This includes a dining room hall, a living room. We have a guest suite for out-of-town guests. We have a large common kitchen and a reflection room. We have a garden. And then among that, we also have our units. We have 2 accessible studios, 16 studios, 6 one-bedroom units, and 2 two-bedroom units. Now I just want to share a little bit more and reflect on some of our values as a society. So thinking about this building design. For us, stewardship and community social connection was a core piece of this. And in our value statement, we state that we give thoughtful care to our buildings, our spaces, and each other, really honoring the fragility and resilience of one another and our environment. And so this one simple line really expresses so much. Our building includes this diversity of spaces that I've started to talk about. We have other spaces like a library, a reflection room, a patio, and then even down in the parkade, we have blended spaces like storage rooms and lockers. We kind of have like a construction area room where you can work on projects. And then, as I mentioned, we have the community shared garden spaces. We also have public spaces like the little concrete patio right on the corner of the sidewalk at Victoria and First. And we're currently working on a mural activation in our alley. And of course, most importantly, we have the very personal spaces of all the individual suites that are filled with the different people who make this a community. And, the one another in our value statement includes residents, staff, guests, board members, and the public who visit and interact with our building. Um, so when we break it down, there's lots of different spaces that we have to steward here. There's the green spaces, the living spaces, the admin spaces, and yeah. So we think about what is a good approach to stewardship when it comes to this, and at a leadership level. Stewardship is acting with the understanding that leadership is a temporary role which is outlasted by the lifespan of our organization. We perform stewardship whenever we actively prepare for the organization's future vitality. So this is investing in our people, our facilities, our finances, and making appropriate upgrades. And then at the group level, it includes ensuring that members within the organization interact well together. So this may look like providing nonviolent communication training for residents, or thinking about different types of programming that really continues to support that community cohesion. And then, yeah, at the individual level, stewardship focuses on promoting well-being for each other within an organization. And what we started to notice over the time is how people began to care about these spaces. Sometimes they do so in an opinionated way, but they also have interest in the way the shared spaces are set up, maintained, and managed. They take ownership and pride in the environment they live in, and they notice when things are missing, broken, or messy. Each spring, our residents come together and we work on putting the garden in. So staff and residents invest in a crop, but we don't know, if it will pay off in months to come. But it is a really beautiful act to see everybody out there. And then there's also this final piece around stewarding one another. Our residents are checking in on one another, they're cooking meals, and there's just the common, hi, how are you doing exchange in some of these common spaces. So these spaces were really built for people to interact, to have tea together in the afternoon, to host their friends and family for birthday parties. And so it's been a really lovely space for those communities to flourish. But one of the things that we've noticed is there are also challenges and opportunities that come to stewarding so much space, 47% of our building. We started to think about how often are these spaces being used, in what ways are they being used or underused, and how do we ensure that we continue to activate them for community well-being and social connection? And most importantly, is it financially stable or sustainable for us to keep these spaces only open to residents in the building? Or should we think about our wider network, our neighbors? So we're at this crossroads right now where we're wanting to think about opening up these spaces as a community center, bringing in organizations and like-minded individuals to come together and to kind of build relationships with our current residents. Although we understand that is challenging. Those residents, this is their home, this is their living room, their larger kitchen. And so we're kind of at this piece of figuring out this challenge. And I think this is one thing for you all to consider when you're designing. So I'm just about to wrap up here, but I just wanted to say some of the big pieces that were really helpful for our organization was really creating and committing to a clear vision. So we knew that we wanted to be able to build and create for social connection and community. So we knew that from the beginning, and that really allowed us to identify who we would partner with and how we could get funding. Yeah, so this allowed us to connect with organizations on similar projects that were already doing this. There's folks out there like Happy Cities and Hey Neighbor Collective that are really thinking about the design of buildings. And then finally, if any of you all are from the church space, we really wanted to make sure that we had clear roles and responsibilities. So the church, Cohere Foundation, and Salsbury, we had to work together to really define our roles, our responsibilities, and understand where the decision making would lie. So I would say that's definitely a core piece of how you can move forward. So yeah, we challenge you to consider thinking about how you can build for community connection, social resilience, and happiness in your next development project.
So Aubree was sharing a little bit about some of their goals, some of the solutions that they brought, some of the innovations around co-housing, some of the challenges. I'm wondering for each of you, as you're listening to this story and to this hearing about this housing development, what are some things that resonated with you or stood out to you when you were listening to Aubree speaking?
I'm curious more of the spaces that you have currently set up for like that social sustainability that you're looking at opening up to the public. I'm sure you noted this in the beginning, but just to, again, for us that missed the very beginning of it, what are these spaces and like what does that look like if somebody's living there, like a kitchen, outdoor kitchen, indoor spaces, community, yeah, that, and then opening it up. That's what my question.
It's a great question. As far as like how do we open it up, we're just kind of like we're just starting to approach that question. So our kitchen was designed to be a commercial kitchen. So we want to first and get that certified by BCH. Um, and and that is one of the big pieces that we're thinking about. But we really want to consider, okay, how do we engage with our residents in this process? Does this mean hiring a community coordinator who is a resident to help support this process? We would want to have some conversations with them. Maybe they know of folks who would want to like rent out these spaces. Um, when I think about the kitchen, it is a closed off section, so or closed off room, and so it could potentially be rented out for, small caterers, or maybe some just like startup organizations that are kind of like trying to get off the ground. Even one of our residents works in this space, and so thinking about maybe she can connect us with her communities. So the other spaces would potentially be, we have 3 different small rooms that are, one's currently like a reflection room, another is an office. And so we're thinking like, what would it be like to turn one of these into kind of like an art residency studio space, where we partner with neighbors and we do kind of like a seasonal residency, and then they get to also like share their artwork with the community. So we want to be creative, but we also want to engage with the residents and see what they want and how it would make them feel they want to feel safe. So thinking about those different protocols we need to have in place, but also things that they want and like are already a part of. Yeah, it's exciting, but it's also it's kind of a new path we're walking. Um, yeah, I think one thing that I've heard from folks reflect on is, would it have been better to have like just this entire first floor, like our whole first floor is these common spaces? Would it have been better to just have that kind of closed off and made it more of like a community center? But the building wasn't built that way. And so that might be something to consider, like looking at different options of those designs, and come by for a tour if you're local, so that you can see what's working for us and stay in contact. Yeah.
So, question I got: I sit on a nonprofit society in a Cuthbertson area youth network. We're a small board. We have a piece of property that used to house right across from the high school. Used to house a youth network, a youth recreation center. Oh, it had a bowling alley. It had pizza place. It was a place for the students from school to come over to learn, and it also had a housing above it, some housing above it. It burnt down in 2005, and so we got this big lot. And what happened? It actually back in the days it had a fuel, had a little gas pump on it, and so then we ran into environmental issues, and we're still struggling with that. But we are a nonprofit society, a small little group, and we're trying to bring it back to life. And we're trying to, so I was trying to figure out this, maybe this co-here housing affordability would be an option for us to work with, with our society with co-here housing, but we just we don't have no funding, and it's really hard struggling finding the funding. We have the lot, it's free and clear title, but and we were off. Or also, we were given from the elementary school across the street a portable, um, which is a fairly large unit, and we want to build a basement, and we want to do housing also, something for the whole community to be involved. Part of it would be to help finance would be on this lot to still have a youth center, green space and things like this, but also how do we, I've gone onto the BC Builds housing site, and it's really, really hard for a nonprofit society to get this off the ground. I guess we need help. We reach out, but they say you have to belong to a different kind of society, and it gets very, very confusing. So I guess we're reaching out. How can we need some help. Be the biggest question. Thanks.
Yeah, well, it sounds like your heart is in the right place. And it sounds like you have some land that you guys can tend to, and that that's the first start, right? Also, I know there's lots of experts in the room, so I'm happy to connect with you further and find ways that maybe we can share our story and support you and offer suggestions. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of new and I don't know, maybe excited about all of this housing. So I feel like there are ways to do it. It definitely takes a lot of work. And I think given that you have youth involved, that's huge. Like I would make sure those youth are part of that board of directors. There's a lot of I don't know, one of my favorite organizations, Environmental Youth Alliance. It's like the board members are the youth. So making sure they're part of that decision making. But yeah, I think there's lots of lessons to learn. I have a case study that I can show you on how we started, and it kind of goes through, I mean, Renewable Cities put it together for us, but I'll share that link here soon, and it just talks about what we did. I think the huge piece for us was that we had the land, and then we were able to build these partnerships, and we had a dedicated group of volunteers that were wanting to work on it, but that can lead to burnout. So I think maybe this is where partnering with Van City and seeing if they have any kind of support to help put together that business plan and start to scope out the work. There might be some grant funding available.
Are there other, I'm wondering if we think about other pieces that Aubree was sharing, are there other things that are coming to mind? Or maybe I'm wondering if the story that she shared has helped you think about important considerations or potential next steps for your organization. What other things stood out to you in this conversation so far?
Well, perhaps I'll go. I think there's a few of us involved today we're from small communities, and the rural experience is very different from the urban experience. It's much, much harder, for one thing, to get the funding. So just to answer your very first question, what resonated, certainly paying attention to the importance of creating spaces for social connections. I do believe that's important in any build actually. Can be very, very hard to get the funding though to support, that extra space. With BC Housing, they don't fund that. CMHC, with their new cooperative funding program, they do allow that. It's difficult though. Our costs per square footage, for building something that you build in your city environments, it's considerably higher for us in rural and remote communities. But I do have a suggestion. I don't know if you're a member of the BC Nonprofit Housing Association, but I would encourage you to get in touch with them, because I think what you need to do is make some connections with smaller nonprofit housing societies, in your region. I'm familiar with, I think you said you're from the cusp, but that would be a really great first step, because that's what we're finding, to find like, for us, it's the Gulf Islands region of the province, to find, other groups who are in a similar situation, because otherwise it's a very lonely, frustrating experience, and people do burn out, boards do burn themselves out, just trying to achieve what seems to be what is very difficult, and in some cases it seems impossible. So, and that's my suggestion too for forums such as this, is just to recognize that that the rural, there's such a difference between the rural and the urban realities, and maybe a breakout space, for those of us who are from the small communities would be, and likewise for those of you who are from the larger urban centers, that would be really helpful. And it's almost always missing, that rural perspective, just the acknowledgement that it's very, very difficult and different. That's some feedback from us.
Yeah, definitely that theme of feeling lonely is really common amongst folks. It's like everyone's just trying to do this. It's just like, who do I talk to? So that's again why we wanted to make this more of a conversation format. And I'm really actively encouraging you to like just be bold and reach out to each other. And certainly the rural piece, absolutely. It's such a and the geographical spread across BC. There's so many different factors and perspectives and realities that you're living in wherever whichever community you're in. Other thoughts? What else hasn't been spoken about here that you're like, this part's missing from the conversation so far, or just other questions that you're coming with?
I'm happy to go again, just quickly. The whole affordability question, in today's environment of really high costs for everything, that is a challenge. It will remain a challenge, I think, for some time. And it seems to me that there is a bit of a disconnect between what funders are willing to do and what groups can actually achieve, in terms of attaining affordable rents, for the people we're trying to support. So I'll just throw that into the mix. I don't think any of us has an easy, ready answer right now, but it sure needs to be on the table for discussion, because we're all asked to make things, and we want to make things. I like the word attainable that I've heard a couple of people use. That's what we all want to do. It's very difficult to achieve, and cover all the financial costs associated with both on the construction and the operating end.
Asked about community engagement and opposition received during the process. Aubree, I'm not sure if you want to speak to that just briefly. We have maybe one more minute and you'll probably get whisked away, but I want to see if you can answer that one.
Yeah, I recall that there was quite a bit of community opposition in the beginning of this project. Lots of people were concerned about, an affordable housing building coming into in their neighborhood. And they hosted lots of engagement sessions where they really tried to share this kind of unique vision of an apartment building. And, towards the end, we've built really good relationships with neighbors. We haven't received any complaints from them. And so I do know it was quite a hurdle. And I think one thing, just reflecting on, just hearing from Taryn, is just like, start small, start having maybe just pop-up dinners, get to know the community, understand what those needs are. I know, Darren, like there's a lot of healing and repair that needs to happen in Lytton after all of the wildfires. And I just want to, share my kind of grief for what the community has experienced there. And yeah, I would say it really just is that relationship building, and make sure you're clear on that vision of what you want to develop. And I think that's something that Salsbury continued to stick to, which has shined through.
Thanks, Aubree.